Are you ready?
Corner where the big boys play. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Ask StreamYard. I am your host, Melanie Dyann Howe. Today is an extra special episode. I'm super excited about today's episode because we get asked questions a lot that we can't answer because we're not lawyers, we're not attorneys. Us, content creators, us StreamYard people, we're like, ooh, that's not in our lane. And so we've actually brought on a special guest that's going to join me today. I'm going to bring him up here really soon. But before we do that, I got to say hello to everybody and make sure I give everybody a wonderful welcome. Where are you all watching from? That's what we always like to kick off. So this is our Ask StreamYard show where it's your chance to ask questions. And so we always like to say, hey, if you have a question, just post it in our Facebook group. We use the hashtag Ask StreamYard. If we choose your question, we're going to take a deep dive on this show. Now, this particular show, we do get questions around legal aspects of live streaming. So that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. So we're not featuring a specific question. We've actually got some questions that are gathered from lots of questions we've gotten in the past, of course. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. But definitely let me know where you're all watching from. I love it when I see return faces. So it's super exciting to see people coming back all the time. We've got a top fan here. I love it. Thank you for that. We've got Manila in the house. We got people from all over the place watching. Definitely excited to see everybody. We've got Dayton, Ohio. We have Oregon. We got, oh my gosh, Alaska again, or Atlanta. And then we have, Indiana. You're right here in my home state. So I'm in Indiana as well. Washington, South Africa. Oh, I love it. We have everybody joining us now. So here's the thing. I also wanted to give you guys a quick update, right? We've got some very exciting things to share with everyone. So before I bring on our special guest, Mitch, I also want to make sure everybody is aware that we released a new feature this week, and it's a game changer. Not gonna lie, I absolutely love this feature. I've been waiting for this for so long. I'm so excited about it. And so what this is this is actually pinned comments or starred comments. And so I'm going to actually show you very briefly what this looks like. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of it because honestly, sometimes these features kind of slip through the cracks. And this is one that I could see people not quite realizing is there for you, but you all have it now. So everybody has this feature in their StreamYard account. So really quickly, I want to show you guys what this looks like. So essentially, you are going to see in your studio, if you see comments out to the right, all the way out, this is a screen recording I did, you're going to notice a star over on the very far right side of each comment that you see. So you have the three dots and then a star. And that star, when you select it, it's going to put it into a queue. And that queue is right there inside of your comments tab. And you now have two tabs, a starred tab and a live tab. So anything that you select the star is going to put it into that queue. So this is a great way for you to actually flag questions, flag specific comments that you want to save for later, right? This is always one of those things where you want to engage with your live audience, but you also want to keep track of questions. This is the solution to that. So you can do this yourself, or you can also invite one of your StreamYard team members, because everybody has a StreamYard team, at least one extra seat for StreamYard teams, and have them maybe hang out backstage and help you, assist you with pinning those comments for you. So it's super great. We're working on a tutorial video for that, of course, that'll be up on our YouTube channel pretty soon. But I wanted to make sure everybody knew about pinned comments because I don't know. I mean, I was pretty excited about it myself, so I had to make sure everybody knew about it. So, okay. So are you guys ready for today's show? I'm super excited to welcome my guest here today. We've got a special guest. His name is Mitch Jackson. He's also known as the streaming lawyer. That's how he's been dubbed. He's been nicknamed. But Mitch is the senior partner at a firm called Jackson and Wilson, Inc., which he founded back in 1986, which, was a while ago, right? He's also the founder of Global Legal Minds Mastermind, the author of the book, The Ultimate Guide to Social Media and Business Owners business owners, professionals, and entrepreneurs, which is a #1 bestseller on Amazon, by the way. And as I said, his friends refer to him as the streaming lawyer. But what might be interesting to all of you is that he's an early user of live video, and he was actually named on Mashable as one of the top 50 influencers to follow on Snapchat. The American Bar Association Journal included Mitch as one of the top legal Twitter accounts to follow in 2017, and he was recently named one of the top social media influencers to follow. So I'm super excited to bring on my special guest, Mitch Jackson. So here he is. Hello, Mitch. How are you today?
Hey, Melanie. It's good to be here. I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on the show. And it's wonderful to be joining you and all of our guests from beautiful Southern California. Live streaming. There's something to live video and live streaming. I get it. I'm here. I'm here for you. Whatever I can do today, it'll be my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, we have got some questions that we obviously have prepared. We definitely want to be able to get to our audience's questions. I know I have a few questions just because, like I said, when it comes to creating content and marketing, there are some legal aspects to keep in mind. There are certainly things that we can run into or some risks maybe that we can take. But at the same time, like I said, we get questions. And I'm just super excited to have you here today on the show because I am not even going to try to answer anything. And I know that today, I want to make sure everybody also knows that Mitch is not giving any official legal advice, right? So there's a caveat there. We're definitely going to be taking your questions and trying to answer them to the best that we can. So here's what I would like everyone to do. I've got some questions queued up from Mitch already, but what I want you all to do is if you have a question related to today's topic, then go ahead and put it in the comments and put a Q in front of it. Okay, so if you put a Q in front of it, that's going to help me see it and find it as a question. And if it's related to today's content, then we're going to ask Mitch the question. So, but before we do that, if you do have a feature request or even a support question or anything like that, please feel free to go to StreamYard.com/contact. There is a feature request form there that you can fill out. We love hearing your feature requests, but we're not going to be entertaining feature requests in today's show. We definitely want to get as much out of Mitch as we can and talk about all the fun things. Now, Mitch, you're a StreamYard user, and I know that you're a big fan of StreamYard, so we love that. What is your favorite thing, I wanted to say, about what StreamYard has been able to help you do when it comes to your streaming journey? Because you've been streaming for a long time, before StreamYard existed. But what's your favorite part of StreamYard and how you use it in your content?
I'm watching it happen in the comments in real time. My favorite part is the real-time interaction with other people who I know, Chris Stone's in the audience, some other friends, or new friends, new relationships. And I think real-time video, looking people in the digital eyeballs, answering questions in real time, adding value, building relationships. For me, that's my favorite aspect of the StreamYard platform. I also like the fact that we can go live to multiple platforms. I think that's huge because many people who connect with me over on Twitter, they're not on LinkedIn or they're not over on one of my Facebook pages or groups. And I think what StreamYard allows us to do is broadcast live across all of these platforms. I really like something you did at the very beginning of our show, and that was a disclaimer. And I think for live streamers, for people using recorded and live video, especially if you're a business, answering questions, sharing your products and services, you're a consultant offering advice, I think incorporating a disclaimer or a waiver into your show and then repeating it every 10 or 15 minutes because people come in late, everyone knows that. So I think it's important that we remind people that, for example, while I am a California lawyer licensed in California, I will not be giving legal advice today. I will be sharing my thoughts, my detailed opinions, and answering your questions, and we'll leave it at that. But that's called a waiver. That's called a disclaimer. And I think I'd like to see more live streaming individuals, business owners, and companies use disclaimers both in their live videos and in their recorded videos. So Melanie, that was a great example of how to do things right at the top of a show. And then we can sprinkle that in throughout the show just to remind everybody that we're here trying to add value. But for someone to become a client of my firm, they need to sign a written retainer agreement. And I'm hoping with the consultants out there using live streaming, using StreamYard, they have the same requirements before engaging a client or being engaged by a client to offer professional services. So use disclaimers, use waivers, and that will keep you out of trouble down the road.
I love it. Okay, so fantastic. Yeah, so I definitely think that disclaimers is probably something that may come up today, right? That we may end up talking about for sure. So, Albitastic says, I hear a lot of disclaimers nowadays. So yeah, definitely one of those things that even if it's a podcast, if it's a live stream, anything, right? So for sure, one of those things that we want to be thinking about, right?
You want to hear the legal reason why?
Yeah.
Here's something nobody ever talks about, Melanie, is look, put together just a short, concise disclaimer. Critically important. But here's the thing. If there's ever a claim or litigation, you've now given your lawyer something that he, she, or they can actually argue for on your behalf in court. They can blow up the disclaimer. This is what was said at the beginning of the StreamYard live video. This is what was posted on the screen. Here it is. Any reasonable person would understand that there was a disclaimer as to XYZ, what the product does, what the services include. So it gives your lawyer the ability to win your case for you. That's something nobody ever talks about. Mm-hmm. They're important, but it gives me a tool to take into a mediation, an arbitration, or a trial to help win the case for my client. So I just wanted to inject that quickly.
Yeah, no, that's good. We actually have a question right about that. So might as well pull this up right now. So, Patty Ling, Sacred Memento says, can we get an example of a waiver for a live sale situation? So, I mean, live selling is definitely becoming, I don't know if you are a big Amazon person, but there's all this affiliate marketing going on all over the place. I even was logged into Wayfair the other day and there was some live stuff going on inside my Wayfair app. I mean, this whole live shopping, this live selling is a big thing. But what about if you're selling something online? If you are actually selling your services or your products, is there something specific, or is there maybe a good example that you can even think of? What is it even required? I mean, when you are selling something online.
So first of all, Melanie, what's important is each state is different, right? The requirements here in California may be different than Utah, Texas, New York, or Florida. So depending on what state you're doing business in, make sure you're complying with that state's rules, regulations, and laws when it comes to waivers, disclaimers, sale as is agreements. Okay, so the first thing that pops into my mind is during a live sale, and I am active as an Amazon influencer. I get it, everyone. If you're doing an as is sale and your state law allows for that, then be concise and specific that this is as is. No refunds. If there's a 15 or 30-day refund policy, be clear and concise in what that policy is. Almost even more important than that is building your brand, establishing your reputation. So whatever it is you promise your purchaser during a live streaming video, make sure you back it up. Make sure you think long term. It's not just about that one sale. It's about the long-term branding and relationships that you can build. So here's another little secret. Oftentimes my clients will come to me and they're right about, well, it's been more than 30 days. I had an as-is sale or consulting agreement. Now 60 days later, they want their money back. What should I do? Well, legally, in that situation, you're not required to return your initial retainer or the money, okay? But from a branding and strategic long-term business approach, I usually will recommend to my clients, listen, do whatever you can do to make this right. Do whatever you can do to protect that long-term business relationship. Because if you have someone out there praising your services or praising the fact that you stood tall and backed up what you said, even when you didn't need to, that's going to go a lot further with respect to your reputation than sitting tight and pocketing, a quick $500 or $1,000 for the sale or purchase of a product. So there are a lot of things at play when we talk about selling items, products, and things during a live video. And I'd like more people to think long term, because sometimes that's more valuable than that immediate particular sale.
Love it. Interesting. So basically, kind of like anything that you would tell somebody if they were in your store, you would want to make sure that they're aware of if they're even buying it from you online and whatnot. Just any limitations, any of those things to make sure. So that's very good. So super cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they can pick up agreements at LegalZoom.com. You can pick up agreements in some of the online platforms, everyone. Warranties, express warranties, implied warranties, all these things come into a single agreement that you can have a client digitally sign using DocuSign.
Yeah, and that's actually a great recommendation. Is there are templates out there online for those
Sure.
types of things, and we may get into more of that here in a little bit.
Okay.
But if you're just now joining us, we are talking to Mitch Jackson, and we are talking about legal considerations when you're live streaming. So if you have questions around that, definitely post it in the comments. Put a queue in front of that. I know I've got some questions queued up for you. I want to definitely make sure that we have some time to talk about those. One of the biggest things, and this has been asked in our group multiple times. It's also been asked in comments sometimes when we are talking about live streaming. So you can go live with just a mobile device, which means you can take your live stream on the go. And so one of the things that people ask about all the time is, hey, what kind of permissions do they need to ask for when they're going live in a public setting? So for example, if they want to go live from their local brewery, from a basketball game, from a coffee shop, what do they need to ask for permission from the facility owner or whatnot? What are your thoughts on that, Mitch?
My thoughts are the three examples you just shared are actually private locations, private coffee shop, a stadium owned by, Mark Cuban's Dallas Mavericks. So you want to make sure you're actually in a public setting. If you're out on a public sidewalk in front of a coffee shop and it's a public setting, then depending on the state you're in, and once again, no legal advice is being given, but generally you have the legal right to record recorded or live video or take pictures if you're on a legitimate public space. Okay, that's the general rule. But what a lot of people don't take into consideration is that if you're live streaming a show in a public place, in front of a building, in a public park, for example, and in your live video, there are objects. There's a BMW or a famous person who are part of the background of your live video. There are other legal issues involved than just whether or not you're on a public spot or in a private place. Those other legal issues revolve around the right to privacy. Are you violating someone's right to privacy who may be in a private place that's viewable from a public spot? I know this gets complicated, but these are some of the issues that I see over and over and over. And I've watched in live video since about 2011 when Spreecast first rolled out. The other issue is you may be lawfully videoing in a public space, but in your background or standing next to you or walking by is somebody who has a right of publicity. In other words, you don't get to just bring in a famous person into your live video that's selling widgets, that's selling objects, that's selling your services, and promote with that live person next to you because he, she, or they have a right to publicity that has value. So you need their permission to do all of that. So if you're in a legitimate public place, the general rule is you do have the right to live video, okay? But there are other consequences and situations you need to take into consideration. And then I always recommend using some type of written release or waiver in order to make sure that you're covering yourself legally. So those are the broad brushstroke responses. We can dive a little bit deeper if there's something I said that wasn't.
Yeah, let's do, because I know that the next question I wanted to talk about is basically about the people. So obviously you talked about the facility, getting permission from the facility, especially if it's a privately owned location, but like also the people in that facility, the people around. Personally, I always think in general, it is good practice to let the people around you know that you are going to be live streaming, you're going to be live on video, because if you don't tell them and they're in the background and they shout something and they don't want that, I mean, it's always good practice to let those around you know, but there's a difference between permission and just saying, hey, I'm about to do a live video, so y'all be on good behavior. But we also have some questions in the comments related to this, and somebody actually said, hey, can you address the idea of children in the video? So what I want you to break down, because you talked about a person who has these special rights of publicity, there's that. And then there's obviously just the general public. And then there's also children. And so Can you kind of address the difference between those and how you would approach that?
So when it comes to children, the laws are different in each state. Generally speaking, what we tell our clients is that if there are going to be children in your recorded or live video, get written consent that needs to be acquired for your state from the parent or legal guardian of any children in your live stream. If you're standing in a public park, okay, so there's no question as to whether or not it's public or private property, and you're shooting a live stream, maybe you have a workout video and you're showing a new workout routine out on the grass in a public park, okay? generally speaking, you have the legal right to do that. I will tell my clients, if there are children involved, even if you're in a public spot, for two different reasons: for legal liability reasons, get a written release, or grab your phone and have a release that you're comfortable with repeating. Get the parent on the phone, shoot a quick video or audio. Yes, I'm giving you permission to allow my children who are playing in the background, to be on this live video. You can just record it on your phone so you have it, so there are no misunderstandings. But as Melanie just said, there's an entirely different component to what we're talking about, above and beyond the legal ramifications. And that is, you want to go ahead and build your brand and portray your reputation as someone that does take everyone's reasonable or unreasonable expectations of privacy into consideration. So if everyone's not on board with what you're shooting in a live video, my recommendation would be go someplace else, move to a different public location, and keep everybody happy. I think that's probably the best protocol.
Yeah, I think that I like that you're basically saying, hey, reconsider what you're doing if it's too complicated, and whatnot. This is a great question. So just adding some clarity. So Anne's Cooking and More says, why do you consider coffee shop a private place when anyone can enter without permission? I think you were saying that it might be privately owned. But
right. So let's take Starbucks. Well, let's take Starbucks, for example. It's a private company. Starbucks has the legal right to set forth the terms and conditions, no shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service. I mean, it's a private business. And so a lot of people are confused about what's a public place and a private business. And there's a difference between the two. Now, oftentimes you'll see people in a private place, whether it's doing karaoke in a bar, live streaming it, which creates all types of intellectual property issues we can get into. Or if you're in a Starbucks, the fact of the matter is, without that Starbucks manager's consent, without the company's consent to shoot live video inside a Starbucks, you don't have the right to do it. Okay. And so you want to be careful about that. And I think a lot of creators are trying to get up to speed on what they can and can't do under the law. And so this is just something that people need to pay attention to. I don't know if that answered the question, but a coffee shop like Starbucks is a private business.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. I think it's a slippery slope, and somebody has made a comment about it's also going to be different. It's going to vary maybe from state to state, so even from country to country. So again, just make sure
absolutely.
You're familiar with your laws locally and whatnot. I think that what I'm hearing you say is definitely ask for permission. It's the right thing to do for multiple reasons. Maybe consider the waivers as well. Like, protect yourself. Don't be,
sure.
Don't just go in and assume, that it's all going to be just fine, because you never know what's going to happen, especially with live content, because it is live. And so you're basically saying, take all the precautions that you can, take all the precautions that are necessary. And if it becomes too complicated or too risky, then select a different venue, select a different, format. Because
Absolutely.
I think that's a good point, is that, maybe like you're like, hey, I want to stream in Starbucks, or I want to stream here. Maybe does it need to be there, right? Does it need to be there? But I also wanted to pull up, this was a really great comment from Pale Dieters. He said, for my upcoming Rose Parade stream, I wanted to do it from in front of a college on the parade route. I decided to ask them for permission. They said yes, but I needed all sorts of waivers and had to get some expensive insurance. So that's another thing to consider, is they may say yes, but they may have some additional requirements that just, quite frankly, is not going to be worth it, right? It just may not be worth it for one live video, right? So yeah.
So another thing to take into consideration is, if you're doing an expensive production in a public place, or someplace you think might be public, but maybe it's actually, the lobby area of a private business. Another reason you want to get written permission, you want to get waivers, and you want to get property releases and maybe insurance coverage, is if you spend all this time and attention to creating your live video show, and 2 months later you get a cease and desist from that private business saying, you know what, we don't want you to run this anymore on social media, pull it down from all of your platforms, or we're going to bring legal action for whatever reason. Okay, you want to make sure that you can go back and show the person who's serving you with the cease and desist letter or threatening you with a lawsuit that you have full and complete written permission to do what you're doing. People have buyer's remorse. People change their minds all the time. And unless you've got your understanding documented in writing, then you're kind of leaving that door open to somebody changing their mind for whatever reason down the road. They don't like what your show's about. They don't like the way you look. They don't like what you said, and then stepping up and trying to shut you down. So by acquiring written permission, licenses, work for hire agreements, permission agreements, from example, the Rose Parade question that's up on the screen, whether or not you need proper liability insurance, get all these things done, especially if you're spending your time and money. And that way you're in control of your content moving forward and not somebody else. Even if you're in the right and you've done everything right, but you didn't document it in writing, it's going to take a lot of your time and a lot of your money in court to defend yourself and prove that you're right. And I don't want to see anybody put themselves in that situation where, where with a couple of documents, they can prevent all of that from happening.
Got it. Yeah. No, I want to pull up this comment too from Mike from Never Let the Machine Win. He says, just because you see somebody else do it, and they get away with it, doesn't mean that you can as well. And so that is actually something that I think we run into as content creators, is we see somebody do something like, oh, that is so cool. That's so fun. I want to go do it. But you have to still kind of do that little check and balance, like, hey, can I do that? Right. So, and sure. I know that that's kind of something that happens, is that sometimes people will get these issues that come to them and they're like, well, what the heck? I saw these people doing it. Well, unfortunately, it isn't always fair, right? It isn't always fair about how those things happen. And I think that, Mitch, let me ask you this question. When it comes to everything we talk about, right, it's very easy where if we talk about all the scenarios where a legal situation can happen, I mean, it can scare you out of doing everything. But is it really super common? And I know this may be getting into a slippery slope of how you want to answer it, but it feels like the main area where I'm seeing issues would be more like copyright claims with music and files and things like that. We're starting to see more of that. But all these other things, it's probably less risky. People are just more flexible. I also think that as the world becomes more used to seeing people streaming and creating content, they become a little bit more comfortable around it. But I mean, it's kind of a slippery slope. Use good judgment. But do you think it's like, do you think it's do we have to be super careful, or is it kind of just, hey, just make sure you're informed?
I think we need to be super careful. I think the consumer is generally more comfortable with what's happening. Okay, and if it's a birthday party or something, you and I, Melanie, are just having lunch together and we're streaming with friends for 5 minutes in Indiana, that's one thing. Okay, but if you're a commercial endeavor, you're selling your products or services and you're live streaming to do this, whatever it might be, I think actually we need to be more careful. I think I'm seeing a lot more litigation, many more claims. My daughter's a third-year lawyer at Shepherd Mullen, which is a global firm. She's up in Century City. They just finalized a $100 million judgment on some of the issues we're talking about right now. Okay, this is something where what a lot of consumers aren't aware of. And by the way, everyone, I'm all into live streaming. I like to have fun. I do it all the time. I don't want to scare anybody off.
Right.
I just want to be real with everyone. And so if you have a chance to document the relationship, the permission, the authorization ahead of time, do it. But what I was going to say is what happens sometimes is we see companies that are startups that are quickly building and generating and becoming bigger and bigger and bringing in more and more revenue. And just because you see what they're doing on social media and nobody's calling them out, they're using other people's content, videos, pictures, graphics, and it doesn't seem like anything's happening, I can almost guarantee you the strategy that's being played by law firms is they're watching and monitoring. There's no sense in bringing a claim against a company that doesn't have any revenue, that doesn't have any assets. But 2 or 3 years from now, once they generate that revenue and assets, that's when they're going to be hit with a lawsuit. So there are a lot of companies right now violating intellectual property rights of other big companies. One happens to be, I'm not going to mention names. They're monitoring the violators. And when the time's right, they'll go ahead and bring a claim and shut them down and sue them for monetary damages. So just because it looks to you as though nothing's happening, doesn't mean that nothing's happening in the background. So just be careful and just follow the rules and regulations of your state, and you should be in good shape.
Yeah. And I mean, I saw an article. I haven't had a chance to read it or dive in. I thought, well, that's timely. I think I saw it like last night maybe or this morning. And I think it's the one Mike is referring to. He says there was a report today about an anime reviewer on YouTube facing litigation from a Japanese studio for moving images. So what would be the best practice for using still or moving images or audio samples for the purpose of debate or discussion of current events. And I
I
know
like that.
this is actually a hot topic because a lot of
Sure.
YouTube creators, live streamers, they want to do reviews. They want to
Yep.
do reaction videos. And there's a lot of that right now. So, let's talk about this for a second.
question.
So it's kind of related to what you were just referring to. And I know we have a lot of other questions I've got them in the queue. So Kathy,
Okay.
Tom, Mike, and some others. So, and Sandeep and Jim, I know I've got your questions in the queue as well. But so we're going to get to those as well. But since you were just kind of mentioning, I thought this is kind of relevant. So what are your thoughts on this one?
So my thoughts are, and this is a great question, and let me take a step back real quick. I'm getting a couple of DMs, how come I'm not in a shirt and tie as a lawyer? So
are you serious?
Yeah. No, that's cool.
We could get all into personal branding today.
Yeah. So one of the things I love about live video and live streaming, especially here on StreamYard, is I can be myself. I was telling Melanie, I went out for an early paddle this morning down at Dana Point Harbor. I was lucky to get back in time for the show. I literally just changed. That's why I'm here. But that's what's fun about live video. I was actually going to go live from my paddleboard and join you, but I was worried about the reception. Now, back to the answer to the question. Here's what we normally tell our clients is if you didn't create the content, if you didn't create the graphic, the image, the photo, the video, whatever it might be, then you probably don't have the right to use it. That's the general rule. So if you didn't create the item that you're using in your YouTube review on your StreamYard show, unless you've got permission from the creator, the owner, you've acquired appropriate licensing rights from the person or company that has the legal right to license them to you. That's a whole nother conversation for another time. Unless you've got permission to use somebody else's content, you probably don't have the right to use it. Now, there's an exception. And the exception under copyright law, and once again, no legal advice is being given, but it's called the fair use doctrine. And what that means is there's an exception that's been carved out under copyright where if you're using somebody else's content legitimately, for example, and these are just a couple of examples, in a classroom for educational purposes, for legitimate critique, for a legitimate news story, then there's a very good argument that you have the legal right to use that photo, that image, that content without the creator or owner or license holder's permission. Now, that's a gray area. The fair use doctrine, what I've noticed in the real world, is usually the party with the best lawyer or law firm wins, and it can take 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 years of litigation. And even if you're right, it's time consuming and it's expensive. So the general rule is if you didn't create the content, don't use it. If you're doing a review on YouTube of somebody else's product and you're holding up a photo or a trademarked item and you're commercializing your YouTube channel, so you're actually doing this to generate revenue, to generate clicks, to generate, affiliate income, whatever it might be. Is that a legitimate critique? Is it a legitimate news show? Is it a legitimate educational experience? Or is your content designed to attract eyeballs and clicks to raise revenue? Does it actually fall under the fair use doctrine? And so these are kind of complicated areas that I think a lot of creators aren't aware of. I would suggest if anyone is using something that they didn't create or acquire written licensing rights to or permission, check with a lawyer in your state, in your country, to see if you're complying with the copyright rules, regulations, and laws before doing it anymore, right? Because we're seeing more and more cases where people are being held accountable with cease and desist letters, with the filing and service of a lawsuit, when someone's intellectual property rights are being violated. And now we're seeing that a lot, everyone, when it comes to NFTs, blockchain, and the metaverse. So be careful. It's not necessarily where you are, what the space is, live video or otherwise. It's what's actually happening. It's what we call a form over substance argument. It's not what you call it. It's what is actually going on. And if there's a violation, then there may be, you may be having some sleepless nights once that claim's filed. And I don't want to see that happen.
No, it sounds very scary. And again, there's a lot to look into. There's a lot to consider with all of these things. And so, I like that you said, hey, get some legal representation, or, just do your homework. Make sure you have the information. But here's the thing. I mean, it's kind of like music, and I know we have a couple questions about music too. If you don't own the rights to play the music, then you can't use it. I mean, there's certain artists out there where I'm like, I love that song, but I can't play their song. They're not getting paid for that. That's their property that they own, and in order to play it or stream it somewhere, they have to get paid for it. And so when you use it, you're stealing it off the shelf. That's basically how that really works. And looking at somebody's product and showing their property or their things that they own is the same thing. Now, this is related but slightly different. So Tom from Alaska says, we want to stream an author of a children's book reading his book. Both the author and illustrator give permission, but the title page says all rights reserved. We publisher permission too. So if they give permission, again, if they sign something, they should be covered in that case. Is that correct? Or is the publisher a third party that also has to provide permission to that?
So the answer, Tom, is you probably do need the publishing house or the publisher's permission too. And I'm glad you brought this up. I just wanted to answer the question directly. Just having written a book, I've got another one coming out in 2022. I've represented a lot of different authors. Oftentimes, an author will assign or sell or license his, her, or their copyright or intellectual property rights to the publishing house in exchange for that business relationship. So that's what I was talking about, is the author may be on board, and that's great. But is the appropriate person who has all of the legal rights, are they on board? Is it on board? And so you do want to follow up and make sure that's the case. Maybe the author will say, I didn't assign any of the rights. And as long as that author confirms it to you in writing, then you're reasonably relying upon it, then you're in good shape. Otherwise, you want to go ahead and secure the rights from the publishing house. The other thing is the publishing house may actually be on board with you doing this. It helps publicize the book. It helps share the talents and the message that this author has written about. On the other side of the coin, the publishing house may feel like your show is going to be diminishing all of the marketing and branding that they've been putting into the book. So you definitely want to make sure you've got permission from all the right people, from all the right places before moving forward with that. And I'm guessing the publisher or the publishing house, all rights reserved, probably has the final say in that happening. So be careful with that.
Interesting. And so so my initial thought on that would have been, well, the author is marketing, them coming out and doing it. They are marketing their book, which is then going to sell more books, which is then going to obviously benefit the publisher. And so there may also even be, is that all rights reserved? Is that basically kind of like, I guess I would have assumed that the author had certain permissions to go out and sell the dang book, right? Like, go market the book, go do readings, go do this.
Was it a work for hire?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Was it a work for hire? Maybe the publishing company hired the author to write the book and retained all the rights. And that's why most of my big cases over the last 35 years, Melanie, and I've been doing this for a long time, one of the parties in the case made an assumption. And they didn't do their due diligence, and they didn't get the right answers to the right questions, and they found themselves in litigation. So I think the takeaway from that particular question and this conversation is just make sure you've got all the rights that you need to have to do what you want to do, and don't assume anything. Get it in writing, people.
Yeah.
Right? And that way you're going to circle back to Melanie and yours truly and say, thanks for those thoughts, because it saved me a lot of sleepless nights. And then also maybe you'll circle back and say, we got the publisher's permission. They loved our show so much that they asked us to interview 10 more authors.
Yeah, let's hope that happens. And Barbara says building good relationships with publishers could blossom into additional interviews with other authors they represent. So great point, Barbara, for sure.
She's a friend of mine, Barbara, one of my longtime live streaming friends. Great point.
Awesome. Okay, so we have a question that goes back to clarity. So Patty Lang, I love that she said this. Can you define intellectual property? I think it gets confused most times. So can you break that one down? Kind of like talk to us like we're, second graders.
Well, what I would say, and most second graders are able to do this now, I would go to Wikipedia and type in intellectual property, okay? Because you'll see a very detailed explanation with drop-down list on what it includes. But basically, as we're speaking about intellectual property today for live video purposes, it's content. It's a live video. It's a photo. It's an object. It's something that you created, or it's something that you copyrighted. You wrote a book and you copyrighted it, or it's a logo. You trademark something, or it's a service mark that distinguishes a particular type of automobile or a particular type of widget that you're putting together. It's doing what you need to do to secure the exclusive ownership rights for all purposes to that photo, that video, that written content, that object, that logo, that emblem, that banner, whatever it might be. The Nike swoosh that you see down here on my jacket, right?
Yeah.
This is trademarked by Nike, and that's what I'm talking about. And so you want to make sure that's what intellectual property is securing the rights. It's filing the right paperwork with the appropriate governmental agencies, both state and federal, to secure those rights. If you've done that, then if somebody violates your rights, you have certain remedies available to you in our court system that you can pursue. If you didn't file the right paperwork, then you may not even have the legal right, oftentimes, but not always, to go into court to protect your intellectual property. So it's just basically ownership interest and certain legal rights in things that you create.
Okay, I love it, and I know we've got some questions related to that. But
All right.
for anyone
I'm gonna keep my answers short, by the way.
Yeah, you're good. For anyone that's just
right.
joining us, though, we are talking to Mitch Jackson today. He is an attorney. He is the streaming lawyer, nicknamed because he goes live and uses live video. But we're talking about some legal aspects of live streaming, and so we've had some great questions so far about, do you have to ask permission when you're live streaming in a public space? Do you have to ask permission of those around you? All those things. We're going to get into some other stuff about guests and some other things too. But kind of around the same topic, there's the whole item of music and audio, copyrights and all those things is a factor. So Kathy had this great question early on, and she said, I stream to YouTube and Facebook at the same time. Each platform has their own audio library. However, when I post, I've gotten tagged for using audio because the music doesn't apply to the other's platform. Should I just not use audio or music? I mean, this comes up a lot, and it's interesting because it kind of goes, there is a little bit of a battle between Facebook and YouTube. They do each have audio libraries, and some songs and some of those audio files, they are exclusive to each platform. And so you definitely have to be careful about that. But what's your take on this, Mitch? What's your recommendation for Kathy?
So we've seen this problem progress, over the years, ever since the first live streaming platforms went live. And a couple of different dynamics are at play here. First of all, you want to review the terms of service agreement with each platform that you're doing business on, okay? Because the TOS controls everything. What Facebook's TOS says may be a little bit different than Instagram or Twitter. And so you want to be able to wrap your mind around, what do I have the legal right to do? You also need to push all of that aside and understand that somebody's intellectual property rights, for example, in music, in a song, is completely separate than what Facebook's TOS, Twitter, or Instagram, or TikTok, or Snap's TOS documents say. If I wrote a song and it's copyrighted, and somehow that song got on Facebook in their library, they thought they purchased it, it doesn't matter what Facebook thinks. In other words, it's my song, I've copyrighted it. So you want to distinguish the answer to this question from what is Facebook and Instagram allowing you to do, and what is the artist, what are his, her, or their rights when it comes to intellectual property. Now, let's just assume all of that's been properly handled, and I've experienced the same problem that you've experienced. And the reality is the algorithms, the way each platform's set up, yes, it can ding you, it can ping you, and it can do exactly what, tag you for audio violations or video violations. And it's kind of a hassle. One of the ways that we've gotten around this is we use third-party services where we can go in, we can find the type of music that we're interested in using in our videos. These companies have already through algorithm, through software, created relationships with all the top platforms so that when we purchase for X amount per month, the ability to find a song and use it in our videos, it displays evenly across all the platforms normally without any issues. Every once in a while, we'll get dinged or tagged, and then we just message the company, let them know which service we're using. We use our identifier, which happens to be our email, and then it's fixed and the video's back up. So I would use a third-party company to get your music from and then distribute that across all the platforms that they've already contracted with and their algorithm has already been told to play friendly with. That's how you can get around it.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jim Lawyer says, he does separate streams, which is really creating a little extra work for yourself. And I agree. I use a third party. I use Epidemic Sound. Actually, there are other ones out there. I love Epidemic Sound. I have never had an issue. I've never had a claim. I've never had a problem. Dear God, I'm knocking on wood now. Fake wood at that. But, I definitely think that in Stream Beats. So another one I actually like to use is Harris Heller's Stream Beats. He is on a mission to provide assets for everyone.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, it's actually great. They're free. You can sometimes get a strike sometimes from Harris Heller's content, but he has thousands and thousands of songs, and they are free. Okay. They are royalty. It's royalty-free music. So really, the solution would be pay the money, use a third-party service, or find a copyright-free but a legit one. Don't just find some small little person, because you really want to find somebody that's truly legit, royalty-free music. And honestly, Stream Beats is what I always recommend to people. But
Melanie,
yeah.
Melanie, what? Sorry, we have a little bit of delay. What Jim Lawyer said. I love the shot on the bicycle, by the way, Jim. That's awesome. We do the same thing. Just to save everybody a lot of time, we might grab a song from YouTube or Facebook or whatever platform allows for it. Do something there, and then do it completely separate on a different platform. It's quick, it's easy, it complies with the TOS, and you're not incurring that monthly, music fee with a third-party company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so with that being said, so Sandeep had this question as well. What about the audio that plays back in the standard StreamYard countdown video? How do we tell Facebook or YouTube that it's been allowed by StreamYard? Is there some online document that we can submit in case there's a dispute raised? This is a great question. What I would recommend to everyone, so what Sandeep is referring to, if this particular countdown, yeah, that one. So everybody has that in their account. Everybody gets that 30-second countdown. That's essential. That is a free music. I mean, it's not. You shouldn't run into any situations where you get a strike or claim. If you do, then you want to reach out to support@streamyard.com. They will definitely give you what you need in order to get that resolved. But you should not have any issues with that. And that the other thing is that a lot of creators are starting to, even StreamYard is starting to provide free assets, free graphics that you can download and use in your streams. And so always make sure any situation you are going to read the fine print. Because another thing that I think what happens is when these claims happen is it's because the license, they may have a particular license, but they may not have the appropriate license with how they're using those assets. So, for example, I know with Epidemic Sound, there's like 3 tiers of licenses you can use. And if you want to use, that song on more than one Facebook profile, for example, you have to upgrade your license. And so sometimes it has to do with the license that you have. So always make sure that you're aware of that as well. So definitely some really great questions here. So I want to move into our next kind of topic, which is about guests, having guests on your streams, having people that you are literally bringing in, very much exactly what we're doing here today. In fact, Jim had a question. He said, we do a weekly show interviewing ultracycling athletes and others from all over the world. Since they're in a different country, is there anything we should do special?
Yeah, Jim, I love the idea of a weekly show here on StreamYard. That's what I tell a lot of lawyers in my mastermind to do, because it connects you with really fascinating people around the world, and it shows another side of you than just being a lawyer, going to court. You get to share your hobbies, your interests, and passions, and that's what's so powerful about StreamYard and live video. Look, here's the thing. I'm going to give you a real-world answer and a legal answer, and you already know the legal answer. The real-world answer is when we're doing live video interviews, oftentimes, if it's someone I know, if it's a friend, I like to keep it simple. I just hop on and go live. And I haven't had a problem in, 10, 12, 15 years, however long we've been doing this, using video of one sort or another. Technically, though, you do want to use a written appearance agreement, a written waiver, some type of written document that complies with the laws of the state or the country that your guest is in that document. And here's what's key, everyone. Whatever whatever the show is about, in your appearance agreement, you're basically getting permission from your guest to any and all intellectual property rights, to any and all use, either past, present, or future of the show. You want to, you're putting in the time to create the show. You want to be able to do with the video whatever you want to do. Clip it, turn it into an audio, which I love doing with StreamYard, creating a podcast. And so you want to make sure that you've got the rights to do all of the above. The other thing is, right now, what you want to do is also include in these rights your ability to take this content and create non-fungible tokens, NFTs, okay? Anything you want to do in the digital space, both on the blockchain or in the metaverse, you want those rights to be included in your contracts. What we're doing is we're starting to incorporate new language so that moving forward, because metaverse is going to change everything, we want to make sure that the content we're creating right now on the web, we can use in the metaverse next week, next month, in 5 or 10 years. The other thing is, in these agreements with guests, have a venue clause. And I know Jim knows what a venue clause is, but for those of you that aren't lawyers, a venue clause is simply a clause that says, listen, if there's a dispute in good faith or in bad faith and a claim's being brought, the parties to this agreement are agreeing that the claim will be brought, in my case, here in Orange County, California. So if I have a guest from New York or a guest from Ontario or Paris or Cape Town, South Africa, if they feel like there's a problem, they actually need to bring their claim in Orange County, California. Guess what? That's a deterrent to helping avoid frivolous lawsuits. That's a deterrent to people bringing small cases, big cases on small matters. And so venue clauses are critically important. Just Google it and you'll see what I'm talking about. The other thing is you want to have, in my opinion, an attorney's fees clause, which means if somebody brings a claim and loses, then they have to step up and reimburse you for your attorney fees, your litigation, and court costs. Once again, that's another high-powered deterrent to help you avoid, frivolous lawsuits or claims that are small in nature but take up a lot of your time and a lot of your energy. So use written documents, and I think that way you can secure your rights to your live stream, not only today, but moving forward in the future.
Yeah, and Jim had a follow-up question. And by the way, I don't know if Jim is a lawyer, by the way. I think his last name is just lawyer. But
misunderstanding. I made an assumption there.
I don't know if he is or not. Jim, are you a lawyer? I don't think he is, but
he is a bike rider though, right?
Yeah, I mean, and he's talking about interviewing ultra, cyclists. So I definitely would, Jim, let us know what your channel is about. But he did ask that question, like, should you get written permission to use portions of the recorded video in future shows or advertising? I know that there are templates out there. You mentioned LegalZoom. I have a really good friend, Bobby Klink. He has templates that he offers as well. And there's a template in there for this. It's essentially whether they're a guest, they write a guest blog post for you, whether they're a guest on your podcast or a guest in your live show, having them sign that, it basically is them saying, yes, I'm handing over my rights that you get to use this for whatever, right? And so I do think that's smart, but don't just limit yourself to portions. I mean, you need to own all of that content. You need to have that permission to use all of it. And so, that you were basically just pointing that out, but kind of as a follow-up, Chris has a great question. Where's a good place for people to go when they're like, okay, you're talking about these waivers and this and that and blah, 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 blah. What are some really good starting points for people to kind of get an understanding? I mean, that's kind of even the way Chris, and by the way, Chris, it's great to have you here with us today. It's funny, even the way he asked it, I'm like, ooh, that's kind of broad. But let's just narrow it down to what you've been talking about, making sure that you know your local laws around marketing content and being out there, and then of course maybe some resources where they can maybe get some of these legal templates that they can use.
Okay, first of all, I think the world of Chris Stone. I love what he does on live video, and his partner Jim, and you guys are killing it. I go to Chris with a lot of my questions, so Chris, it's good to see you. So I may regret saying this, but I'm gonna put it out there just because I love StreamYard. Melanie, I love your show. I actually have a list of forms that, along with links where you can download the forms. They're not forms that I created. They're third-party tools that I just put together because I get asked this question all the time. And I'd be happy if anybody wants to DM or email me, share this list with you, okay? These forms are such that, for example, an appearance agreement, if Chris is on my show, then I might have Chris, I just DocuSign him a document. He digitally signs it. It takes 30 seconds. We're both protected. It gives me and Chris the ability to understand what the rights and remedies are between us. But it's more than just an appearance agreement. If you're doing a production and you've got studio help, people in the studio working behind the scenes to set up the lights and the cameras and everything else, you're going to want to have a separate agreement with them. Certain state law may apply when it comes to workman's compensation, when it comes to labor law issues. There are 7 different agreements that you probably want to use if you're doing a live video show that involves other people. Guests, production assistants, acquiring the rights to be going live on a particular piece of property, whether it's public or private. The content that you're using, where are you getting it from? Do they have the legal right to provide you with it? So Jim, Chris, there are a lot of different documents that I see coming up over and over and over. So what I did is I did a Google Doc with the list of each of the documents. And I would encourage any creators, just ping me or ping Melanie. I'll share the link with Melanie, but you can look down this list and see which documents apply to you. And I can almost guarantee everybody, you're going to see on this list some things that are going to spark your mind into thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't even think about that. I'm going to go ahead and go online and find this document, or I'm going to have a lawyer draft this document for me so that I'm protected. So there are multiple documents that we all need to be using, including the documents, Chris, that we've already talked about.
Yeah, no, we will definitely get that link, and we'll make sure we put it in the description and stuff so that everybody can get access to that. It's smart to do a Google Doc so it's just easy to update.
That's why, and my firm was not providing any of these documents. I'm not just generating business. It's like, these are resources that will help you. Good luck.
Love it. Okay, great. So awesome. More really, really good questions related to some of this. So I want to, we've got some questions around guests. So let's talk about those while we're still on the topic. But I also have a question. By the way, Jim is not a lawyer. He's confirmed with us.
Isn't that a great example of how when we make assumptions,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Things
it's funny.
Go sideways. Yeah, I think I love that. I love that, Jim.
I'm sure that Ohio Ram Show and Jim both had a giggle with that. So it's pretty funny. But in Ohio Ram Show, I know you have a question as well about hotels. Definitely got that in my queue as well. But still talking about this whole guest thing, because it was one of the questions that I wanted to talk about as well. But this is a really good one. So Sty North says, if you have an open variety show and have random guests on panel, should you have a waiver from each panelist? If so, it would be a paperwork nightmare for a small channel. So I think what Sty's talking about is, sometimes a lot of these people will do these live call-in shows or these live style shows where, somebody can literally say, I want to come on, and like hot seats or whatever. So talk to me about the difference between a waiver and a disclaimer, meaning like, what is it okay to just put in the description, hey, if you come on the show, you are telling us we get to do, whatever. I mean, is a disclaimer going to cover you here? Is that good enough? Because that might be, especially in these on the fly situations, right, that happen. So talk to me about that.
Well, Sty asked a very good question. And I'll tell you what a real nightmare is, Sty, is for a small channel or small business owner is being wrapped up in litigation. Okay. Any inconvenience with obtaining a waiver or disclaimer is substantially outweighed by, protecting yourself from being dragged into litigation. And I know that's not what anybody here wants to hear, but it's super important to get, written permission from people that are coming in. What I would suggest to everyone is you put together, it's a short 3/4 page waiver / disclaimer. Melanie, it's all in one document. Mm-hmm. And you have either one of 2 ways of going about this. As guests come in, and I understand it's a challenge, but you have them digitally sign it before being allowed on the show, or you set up your show so that before somebody can get their appearance link on StreamYard, click that link, they have to first click the waiver / disclaimer that takes them to the next page where they can then click and join you. So you've got some type of digital trail,
a
workflow that really does protect. It advises everybody of what's about to happen, and it protects you if something goes wrong. So, I do think it is something that you want to set up, but you can set up a workflow that's simple for everyone.
Yeah, you could. I mean, it could just be even a Google form, just taking them through the process. And if they check it, and that's probably sufficient. And those are
Yep.
pretty easy to do. Google forms free to create and whatnot. So, do your research. And if it's something I hear his pain point. He's like,
I hear
ugh,
it. I
what a
do
pain in
too.
the butt. I'm just a little channel. A lot of people are creating this content. It's a hobby for them. It's fun for them. It's really, they don't want it to become this big cumbersome thing. So, but what you just described, I was going to kind of mention as well, because sometimes that extra work you put into something, a system or a process, will pay you in the long run. So it might be painful to set up, but as Mitch said, if you set up the workflow, make it part of this process, it actually is going to protect you, which is going to give you that peace of mind for sure. So I love that you recommended that. It's certainly something that I know a lot of people probably need to do. In fact, it was interesting. Somebody made a remark on here that pretty sure most podcasters aren't doing waivers or
that.
doing any of that. Yeah, here we are, Pale Dieters. And I agree. I mean, I think that this is a step a lot of people are skipping. And there's a couple things here. Some people might be like, oh, this is such a pain. But imagine if you have someone on your show, or if you have a podcast and you ask them to come on your show and you say, hey, I just need you to sign this little document, yada, yada. It actually they're not going to sit there and be like, well, what is this? Am I signing my life away? I would guess that most people are going to look at that and actually respect you more as a content creator and as a business owner, because you are taking that extra precaution. And they're probably going to just feel a little bit more like, I don't know, you're going to feel a little bit more legit to them. And so kind of look for those silver lining aspects to it. None of this stuff is fun. I hate to say that. But it is what it is. And I love that you're coming on here today, Mitch, to not scare people away, but certainly give us those honest, candid answers that, hey, when we skip some of these steps, you are opening yourself up to risk. And one of the things that I think is really important to note here is that you might be a small channel today, Sty, but what if you blow up? What if things happen? What if things really go great for you? And in a year from now, you're not just a little channel. You're actually a big channel. If you don't take those precautions now, some of those old guests could come back, of course. And I'm sure, Mitch, you've seen some of those situations and some of those nightmares happen. So you might be small today, but put those systems and those processes in place so that they're there for you and you don't have to worry about it as you go and as you grow, for sure.
If looking at the comments, look, here's the thing, whether or not a creator realizes whether or not they need the stuff that we're talking about, you actually do. Just trust me on this. If you, for whatever reason, decide you're not going to be using, written waivers and disclaimers, be very careful with what you say, what's discussed, and what you use on your live stream. If you're very, very careful about all of these things, you can kind of avoid the legal landmines. But it takes a while to figure out exactly what you can and can't do. And oftentimes people stumble along the way, and then they find themselves, facing a claim that's going to put them out of business. So, even Mr. Beast, on YouTube, everyone, you'd be surprised at the documentation that they use before that video is even made. All of the different documents I'm talking about, the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, including liability insurance, including 10 other things we haven't even discussed. So what you're seeing is the end result of a lot of professionals coming together to create a video with 50 or 100 million views. And it doesn't just happen overnight.
Yeah, for sure. And the Square Table Degenerates clearly has his opinion, which is fine. And here's the deal. Mitch is providing everybody with information so that you have what you need. Whether you choose to go about this is on you, right? It's on you. If you don't feel like you're at risk, then that's on you. That's totally fine. And so, the whole reason we wanted to ask Mitch to come on, and I want you to be respectful in the comments. And
We're
so
good. We're good.
Yeah, no. The whole reason that we have Mitch here is to let us know what maybe we aren't aware of, right? Because as he said, a lot of people are making assumptions, and some of these people watching have small channels, but some of these people watching have very large channels, and they maybe are at a different kind of risk level than others. And so I certainly appreciate you being here, Mitch, today. And as I said, everyone's going to make their own decisions with whether they take these actions or not, and that's on them, and that's totally fine. We just wanted to be here to offer up you as a resource, and I certainly appreciate you being here to do that.
My pleasure.
Yeah, let's keep moving with some questions, because I know Sty had a follow-up question, and Mitch, you had said that you were going to share a resource with us. So Sty, come back to the stream maybe tomorrow, and we'll get that link up where he's got some recommended resources where you will probably have those canned waivers.
Got you covered, Sty.
For sure. So definitely very good. Okay, we've got more questions coming in. So Mitch, how are you on time? Are you good to hang out a little bit longer?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome.
I'm going to keep my answers short, and then if you want me to elaborate, I will.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay. So Mike from Never Let the Machines Win, he said, recently there have been concerns about doing giveaways during a live stream, especially on YouTube. What do you think? And I know giveaways have been a hot topic around here because StreamYard has a free giveaway tool now that you can use in your streams for your people that are in the comments. So, and if you want to learn more about that, you can go to StreamYard.com/giveaway and you'll see all of that. So what is your thought on this? Have you not tried the giveaway tool?
No, but here's the thing.
You're going to have to, you got to play with it.
Melanie, I'm so excited about the metaverse and what we're doing. We're meeting clients now on spatial.io and some other platforms. I'm giving away on December 20th a Oculus 2. Okay. And so this question, I get it, right? And I didn't know about the StreamYard giveaway option. I will be taking advantage of it probably tomorrow, just so everybody knows. I'm going to check it out. All right. So what you want to do is two things when it comes to giveaways. You want to check out what the terms of service agreement provides for on that particular platform. The question has to do with YouTube. So check out the giveaway provisions, contest provisions in the YouTube TOS agreement, and then check out what the state laws are in your state when it comes to giveaways. Each state is different. Some states allow you to do almost anything you want as long as there's no fraud or misrepresentation. It's at arm's length. It's an actual giveaway. Other states don't allow it to happen the way you're thinking. So you want to be careful about that. Those are my two short answers.
Interesting. Okay, good to know. How would someone know, or how would someone find that out?
Two things. Go to the YouTube terms of service agreement and read it, number one. Then with your state, I would do a Google search. Am I able to do a giveaway in the state of California? Look at the Google results. Most states, this question's been asked for the last 15 years, ever since social really started developing with Twitter and Facebook back in the day. A lot of different community service organizations have asked this question. Our Rotary Club has been involved in some different giveaway raffle item issues here in the state of California in a good way. And so those answers are out there. Check your state, just do a concise Google search and you'll get the answers you're looking for. If you don't, just ping me and then I'll see if I can get that answer for you. It's always my pleasure.
Sweet. Okay. So let's, we've got another question here. Ohio Ram Show, who we now know is Jim Lawyer, not the lawyer's co-host. He says, what about streaming from hotel rooms using Wi-Fi? Do we need the hotel's permission since we are a renter, so to say? So yeah, you're using their kind of service. Is there anything special to do there? I've not thought about this or heard of it, and certainly maybe an exception situation, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm guessing where this question is coming from is, is there a throttle or limitation that the hotel is requiring their guests to comply with? Once again, it would depend on any written documentation that you enter into when you sign and check into a hotel or a resort. I will tell you, I've done dozens and dozens of live streaming shows from, hotel lobbies and rooms and conference rooms. And I can't remember the last time we had specific permission as a guest to use the Wi-Fi for a live stream. I think the companies all worked that out ahead of time. But I think generally speaking, it would come down to legally, whatever that contract is that you sign when you check in, it's going to delineate what the terms and conditions of your Wi-Fi usage is from your hotel room, probably for any and all purposes. I know that's not the answer they want to hear, but that's probably the most accurate answer I can provide. As a lawyer, sometimes what I found, just being a first generation lawyer, first one in my family that went to college, went to law school, didn't know what I was getting myself into, Melanie, but I really enjoy helping people. 35 years later, I love what I'm doing. But I will tell you, one of the most challenging things of being a lawyer is telling people not necessarily what they want to hear, but what I think they need to know. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. And so I apologize to anybody if I've done that today. I mean, I want to have fun. I'm a big fan. I love live streaming so much. Then when live streaming first rolled out and I was on my way down to a social media conference to speak in San Diego, I coined streaming.lawyer because I wanted to walk my talk with all the entrepreneurs in the room. So, take what I share with a grain of salt and then, obviously conduct yourselves accordingly.
Absolutely. And I love Pale said, You mean we should actually read those long terms of service agreements?
Somebody's got to read them, right? Somebody's got to read them. I'm not saying that I do, but I think somebody needs
I know.
to.
And basically what you're saying, same thing with the hotel. I think definitely bottom line, especially at the hotel, just ask. Just talk to somebody, ask, read something, just do your due diligence, have a conversation for sure. And Pale says it probably comes down to what you'll be streaming to. Certainly, I think that they may ask, like, hey, well, what is it about? What are you doing? So, and it goes back to what you said earlier, is you are at you're at their facility as well. So you actually kind of probably need to get permission anyway, because you are in somebody else's property.
There's another factor I think that's just as important. This is a high quality show, Melanie. You're putting it on. I mean, everything here is professional. If you're going live from your hotel room or from a hotel lobby, ask whether or not there's an alternative high broadband connection that you can use to create the best user and client experience. Oftentimes hotels will offer you a different Wi-Fi option than what's in the rooms. And I think that will help you produce a better, higher quality show. So take that into consideration also.
I also know that, and I also know many hotels actually will have an Ethernet connection as well, which anytime you can be hardwired in, especially if you're using a computer, is always going to give you, almost always going to give you a better, stronger signal for sure. So, okay, so a couple other rapid fire questions here that I want to make sure I get to here. So this is one from a ways back. So Rudy was asking this question around back to the music thing that we were talking about. And I know another thing is people like to do covers. They will like to sing covers and do that. They've got to be careful about that as well. I know I've heard a lot of issues about that because, again, you don't own those lyrics. You don't own the song. But what about karaoke? When she says, how about making a lyrics video or a karaoke? Do we still need permission from the owner of the song?
Well, you need permission from whoever has the copyright of that song. It may not be the owner anymore. They may have sold it to a third party. So yeah, that was a big problem back in the day when Periscope first rolled out with live streaming from karaoke bars. There were a lot of intellectual property violations taking place. I don't know how many claims came out of it. I don't know if any artist or music industry professionals pursued those copyright violations, but it's not okay to do that without proper permission. For
sure. Mike, he's so funny. Better I read the terms of service than a judge reading it to me. Great point. That's a good one.
Wait, can you put that up again? I want to take a picture of that.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, Mike is one of our favorite. He's always in our comments. He's great. He's actually also one of our beta testers, testing a lot of our features.
That is the comment of the week. Thank you. You just made my day. I love that.
It was a funny one. Okay, so speaking of comments, Jim wants to know, he said, hey, speaking of comments, what about comments we show in the stream? Obviously with StreamYard, we can display comments. Is it implied if they comment, we can use it?
I think so. And I think the way StreamYard's set up, one of the things I noticed early with StreamYard is to be able to comment, you actually have to click and request or get permission to tap into the platform.
Now that's if you're part of a group. So I actually know the answer to this question. I'm not an attorney. Dear goodness, no way. But here's the deal. Your comments on public social media content is public. You are commenting. It is public. That's why your comment can then be screenshotted and used. There's all kinds of things that can happen there. So if you're in a public setting, if you are in a private group, it is different. That is a private place. When you join a private group, your privacy, there is a privacy clause with Facebook that you are in a private community. And so anything that happens in there is supposed to be retained as private. So if you're a Facebook group owner, you need to know as well that comments or anything posted in your private group is not for you to just go use for whatever you want. So if somebody puts a big, hey, I love this group, it's so great, you can't screenshot that and use it in your marketing without permission because it's private to your community, only to be used in the community. And that is actually why if you are watching from a Facebook group, so if you're watching from our StreamYard Facebook group, StreamYard automatically puts the link that Mitch is referring to. And that is when you click that, you are giving you're telling Facebook, yes, you can give StreamYard access to my face, my picture, and my name, and therefore display the comment. You're basically saying at that point, it's okay if they pull my comment up. If you don't do that, we can still display your comment, but no one can see your face or your name. And so that's actually how that all works. And so if you comment on public social media content, it's public. And so it coming up on screen is no different. So that's actually, now there is a little bit of a clause there.
Yes, there is.
If you download a public video and then all of a sudden you go put it on a blog post and you have those comments displayed, that now you've broken that linkage. So you really do need to consider getting permission at that point if you're going to repurpose that video in a different place where they originally commented.
So Melanie, just following up on what you just said, also take into consideration that StreamYard allows us to push this out to multiple platforms. Okay, right?
Yep.
And so what you just said, we want to keep that in mind because StreamYard is actually, this is a private show. This is a private, hang with me, everyone. This is a private show that's being publicly broadcasted. So StreamYard, Melanie, they have the right to do whatever they want with their private show. And then they decided to publicly broadcast this across multiple platforms, which is wonderful. I think there's a strong argument that if somebody comes in on a platform, not through the StreamYard link, and comments in this private show where it's impliedly understood that it's being broadcasted to public platforms, then you've got implied consent. There's express consent in writing, which is what we've been talking about, but there's also the concept of implied consent. Would a reasonable person understand that what's being said, what's being communicated, if somebody pops on the show via video? I think it's impliedly understood that this will be used not only for private reasons, but also public reasons. So keep that in mind.
Good point. Very good point. Thanks for adding that to it. Okay, couple more questions here.
We would make a good legal team.
Oh my goodness, I don't know. I'm not wearing a suit and tie, I can tell you that.
Yeah, it makes two of us.
Right? So Crystal, who's a really dear friend of mine, is a podcasting specialist and host and everything, but this is great. I loved this question. She said, if you're creating sponsored content for a brand on your own channel and they don't like it after exchanging goods but not signing a contract, do I still have protection as the creator? So the example she's talking about is, let's say a microphone manufacturer sends her a microphone and they say, hey, we would love for you to do a review of this microphone. We're going to pay you for it. She obviously is going to disclose that in her content in the video. What if after it's done and they don't like it? What does that look like?
What it looks like, Crystal, is you want to have, the reality is, and I represent a lot of brand ambassadors. I'm actually a brand ambassador myself for a dozen different products in the legal industry. You want to have a written agreement up front so that when you put in your time, your attention, your efforts to create this content, and I know this isn't how it really works, then in exchange for all of that, you're being compensated for your time. To expect that compensation to take place after the fact is kind of rolling the dice. And that's not the way you want to set up your consultation, your brand ambassadorship business. You want to get a written agreement up front. Now, I know in the real world, that's not the way it works all the time, but I will tell you with the clients that we represent, and they're globally known brand ambassadors, some of the most well-known people in the space, what they're doing is they're getting these contracts and agreements, these brand ambassador agreements taken care of on day one before any time, any effort, any branding takes place with your photo next to this particular mic, okay? The other reason this is critically important is in these initial agreements is the content that you're creating, does it belong to you or does it belong to the company, the manufacturer? Is there a work for hire provision or agreement built into your brand ambassador agreement? And so the only way you can answer those questions in a way that favors you is to have the agreement created, a template for you that hopefully you're using, and get it worked out and negotiated before you put any time or effort into promoting the product. Now, I may have misunderstood the question, Melanie, but that's my recommendation on how to handle these situations.
No, I definitely don't think you misunderstood it. And she says that's a great point. And I love that as well. Is if maybe the brand isn't giving you an agreement, well, then you create one that protects yourself for sure. And say you know, because you know, I know that I think that, you know, even with the whole waivers with guests and all the things, I think there are a lot of even big companies that are going about this a little loosey-goosey, right? They're not really documenting these things. They're not really doing contracts. They're like, hey, we'll send you some stuff. Just do this and make sure you mention this. And it's pretty loose. And so you definitely taking ownership of yourself and putting your own, you know, hey, well, I will do it, but just need you to sign this little thing right here. That's a great point.
Real quick to Crystal's point also. So also though, if you want to get your foot in the door and you want to knock their socks off and let you show them exactly what you can do with your influence to your macro or micro community, that's great. I encourage that type of entrepreneurship also. But just understand, if they don't like the finished product, or if the wrong executive gets involved and says, you need to take that down, then that's what you're going to have to do. It's kind of
Mhm.
a risk benefit type of analysis, but have fun doing it. I think that's the most important part.
For sure. Black and Blue is just going to make one that says, "It's mine. It's all mine." Hey, you could do that, I suppose. Okay, here we've got a question from Square Table Degenerates podcast. If someone's getting bullied on YouTube, do they have any legal recourse for harassment? Colorado's the state where it matters.
Yeah, what a huge problem, right? This is something that's near and dear to my heart. I've got a blog post that I set up 10 years ago, everyone, that lays out in detail what to do if you're being bullied, if you're being harassed, if you're being trolled on the social media platforms. I include contact information on who to reach out to, each of the companies. Kim Garst and I did a show together. A lot of you know Kim Garst, where we actually dived deep on a lot of these issues. We had friends that were just being trolled and bullied, and it was just disgusting to see what happens. When you link to that, and what put me over the edge had to do with teen suicide, bullying taking place in school, on social media, which results in a young child taking his, her, or their life. And so, number one, there are ways to handle it. And I would suggest pinging me, or I'll share my blog post with Melanie that lays out the steps. Number two, on a less severe business to business, maybe you've got one business kind of making unfavorable comments about your products or services, I would highly recommend Jay Baer's book, Hug Your Haters. It's a great book that kind of helps you create the right mindset to dealing with business trolls or unhappy customers and things like that. And I had one other suggestion that just left me, but those would be two great. Oh, the last suggestion is dear friend of mine, Sue Sheff, wrote the book Shame Nation. And in Shame Nation, I was a consulting expert in the book. We talk about all the different ways that you can deal with bullying and trolling on social media. The foreword to that book was written by Monica Lewinsky. And so it was a very well-written book, very best-selling book, and it's a lot of great tips in that book. So those are the three ways you can learn how to deal with bullying, harassment, and trolls on social media.
Yeah, definitely a serious topic. Definitely something that everybody should, honestly get themselves aware of what your steps would be if that starts to happen, because it can. I mean, it can. There are people that just don't have lives, and they need to find better ways to spend their time. But well, before we sign off for today, I have one last question that I wanted to ask you, and it's essentially, what's one of the biggest legalish oh, it's supposed to be a hyphen in there, mistakes that you see live streamers and video content creators making? What's one of the biggest mistakes you see from a legal standpoint that you just keep seeing, that you're just like, oh, I keep seeing this over and over and over. I wish that they wouldn't do that, or I wish they would do something they're not doing. What would that be? And if it's something we've already talked about, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'm happy to say, Melanie, you've got your finger on the pulse of the challenges and problems and legal issues that we see popping up. It's what we've discussed during today's show, and I really mean that. I think it revolves around intellectual property rights, around copyrights. Get up to speed on the term copyright. What does it mean? Just Google it. Go to Wikipedia. Using other people's content, even in good faith, even if you're, like, I want to show this photograph because I love this painting, or I want to take this item and convert it into an NFT because I love this ocean setting during the sunset. If you didn't create the item, if you don't have permission to use it or an appropriate license, then you probably don't have the right to use it on live streaming. So I would say intellectual property violations, copyright violations, and I see this snowballing. The problem's getting worse and worse and worse. And just because people, like some people in the audience who are used to it, or they feel like that's just the way we're doing business in today's world, truth be told, it's going to rear its ugly head more so in the future than what we're seeing today. So pay attention to intellectual property rights. Get a book on, and there's a great book out that a client gave me. I'm looking at it. It's on my desk. I'm not going to hold it up because the cover is copyrighted, but I can mention the name of the book to you, and it's very, very good. And it's at all the major bookstores on Amazon. It's called Patents, Copyrights, and Trademarks for Dummies. That's why the client gave it to me, right? That last word. And it's, it's a For Dummies book. patents, copyrights, and trademarks for dummies. It's written in a way where we can all understand it. And it's also written in a way that I think will complement, Melanie, everything that you and I have talked about during today's show.
Awesome. Well, I love that. And I love that we closed out with that. This has been such a helpful episode. I know that legal stuff and copyright and waivers and all the things, it's not sexy, right? Yeah. It's not fun. It's not the fun part of it, but it's important. And so I do appreciate you taking your time today and spending time with us, and being very generous with your time, actually, and offering your insights, your experiences, because, hey, you've seen things go bad, so you know what can happen. You've heard the stories. You've been involved in some of those by helping people. And so you're a streamer yourself. So I loved that we got to have you on, because you're not just a lawyer coming in and preaching to us what we need to do. You're a content creator yourself. You're having fun with live videos. And so I loved that balance that you were able to bring to our audience today. And I super duper appreciate it. Mitch, before I let you go, let everybody know the best place for them to stay in touch with you, to learn from you about any of this stuff or the other things.
Sure. Well, grab your paddleboard and meet me down at the water. That's the best place to connect with me. But if you're not able to do that, jump over to streaming.lawyer. Stay connected there. I offer a lot of resources for business owners and entrepreneurs, especially in the digital platforms moving forward, that hopefully will answer your questions. A lot of things we talked about, Melanie, if they just simply put in the search terms in the search bar, it'll take them to the articles and posts that I've already referred to. But streaming.lawyer is the best place to connect. Melanie, it's been great being part of the show. I'm a big fan of the StreamYard platform. I love using this technology to connect with potential clients, existing clients, and consumers around the world. And so today and this morning here in Southern California, it's been my pleasure.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. And I appreciate, too, that you're stepping out of the norm, right? I know you were getting DMs about, well, if you're a lawyer, why aren't you dressed like one? Well,
I know. When I was dressed like one, real quick, 30 seconds, because this is critically important. Yeah. I wish we had brought it up sooner, is when I was defending a well-known influencer who was sued. I'm stuttering. Who was sued for $5 million, everybody, because of a 20-minute live video that he did about somebody else. It took us a year in court wearing my suit and tie, Melanie, okay? Mm-hmm. Multiple appearances, multiple depositions, multiple court hearings before I eventually was able to get the case completely dismissed for $0. But I got to tell everybody, it was stressful for the influencer. His family didn't know what was going to happen. If they won the case, the other side won the case, it was going to put him out of business and you have to file bankruptcy. What we talked about today is real, and the last thing you want is a lawyer standing next to you in a suit and tie in court to show that you did something right. And so this is the way you want me. This is the way I want to roll. And Melanie, I'm always here for you and your community. This has been a real pleasure. I appreciate it, Mitch, and we appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you. All right, Mitch, see ya. Oh my gosh, I loved having Mitch on. I have wanted to find somebody. In fact, it's been something I've been looking for a while, because y'all have had questions about legal stuff and copyright and things. And as I said, I am not your girl when it comes to that, right? And so I'm so grateful that Mitch spent his time with us today. And again, I think that the biggest thing is that, hey, again, all the things, the insights that Mitch shared, he certainly didn't give anybody any legal advice today. He simply was letting you know what to be aware of, what resources are out there, what risks you might be taking. It's up to you whether you take action, right? It's up to you whether you heard what Mitch said and said, okay, I'm going to now do waivers for all of my guests. I know I certainly had some mental notes as he was describing some things. And so I just hope that you walk away from this episode more informed, so that you can make more informed decisions about how you decide to go about your own streaming business, your own streaming platform and whatnot. And if you're new to streaming, now you know some things that maybe you didn't even know you needed to know. And so again, super gracious that Mitch was on with us today. And I definitely wanted to just give that shout out to him. We will make sure that we provide the link in the description once we're able to have it, of that Google Doc that he talked about that has the links, his recommended kind of resources about how you can get some of that assistance to create those waivers and some of those things. So I definitely appreciate all of you all being here today. I know it's not as exciting as cameras and features and things, but it's important. And I definitely want to make sure that we can do that for you as well. So join me next week. I'm live every Wednesday here for the Ask StreamYard show at 11 o'clock Eastern time. I certainly hope that you will join us again next week and all the weeks after. But meanwhile, go have a great day. Go do some research. Maybe think about some things you might want to do a little differently when it comes to how
you're approaching those streams and all those legal aspects of everything. Meanwhile, don't forget to make it fun. I love how Mitch kept saying that. Make sure you're having fun as well. All right, everybody. I'll see you next time.